Hi, welcome to Mom to Mom. My name is Carrie, and I'm a part of the Mom to Mom ministry team here at ABC. Whether this is the first time you're tuning in or you've been to Mom for a while, we're glad you're here. We meet in person the first Thursday of every month from September to May, and we'd love to have you join us. We hope you enjoy the teaching you're about to hear.
Missy shot this summer up at Shaver Lake. And if you notice the partnership, you notice the guys in the back actually paddling, and the wife is standing there, and she's just moving her paddle back and forth. She's faking it, and it's not even hitting the water. So this morning, I'll tie this in to what I'm talking about, but we were talking about videos, and Missy showed us that. I was like, that's what I want. You have to show that. So if you've been with us earlier in the year, then you know that we're talking this year about habits and rhythms, and talking about how it's what you do every day, the habits and rhythms that you put into your daily life that will shape who you ultimately become. So we've talked about how it's the ordinary moments compounded over time that shape us. So I think we've made the case so far this year for intentionality and for thinking through what habits and rhythms we want to incorporate in our lives. But if it's what we do in the day-to-day that matters the most, then we need to know what we're trying to accomplish in the day-to-day. You see, beyond and behind the concept is who are you trying to become? What's your family trying to become? What is your goal? What's the goal for your family? In order to successfully decide what habits and rhythms you want to shape your life, you need to know the answers to those big questions, to ask yourself and to evaluate who's your family and where are we going. Zig Ziglar has a famous quote that says, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. So nothing great happens by accident. Otherwise, you're going to be like that lady sitting there in the kayak, and you're going through the motions, you're moving your paddle, and you're not even hitting the water. I think most of us know that effective businesses and organizations have a clear picture of where they're going and what they're trying to achieve. We understand that the most brilliant business minds, the best coaches, the influential leaders, they are able to rally people behind a specific vision and a specific purpose. And because they have a clear strategy of where they're going and what they're trying to achieve, they know how they can then work backwards and figure out how they're going to get there. They make their goals, they set their budgets, all based on trying to achieve their purpose. It helps them focus on who they want to hire, what to buy and what not to buy. A clear purpose really shapes everything. So if we know this, why don't we apply it to our personal lives? Do you have a specific vision identified for your family? My guess is that most of us don't. My guess is that we have a general idea of our family's purpose. We want to glorify God. We want to raise happy, healthy kids. We want to be a good wife. We want to be a good mom. But we don't have a specific articulated purpose for ourselves or our family. We have a general idea of some of the primary concepts that we're hoping to teach our kids, but we don't know what exactly the most important things to us are. What makes us who we are? What is driving and shaping how we're trying to raise our kids? If you're a Bible-believing Christian, then you probably have the general aim of pleasing the Lord with your life as your goal, and you have the Bible as your guide, so you're ahead in some ways. But there are so many great character traits listed in the Bible, and there are thousands of amazing verses. But God made you as a mom, and he made your family unique. The things that are most important to you might not be the things that are the most important to me. I might want to teach my kids to never quit and teach them perseverance. And you might want to teach your kids how to be creative. You might want to teach your kids to be risk takers. You might want to teach them how not to conform to culture. So what is the core things that are the most important to you? And what's shaping your parenting? What are you trying to pass on specifically to your kids? Remember, nothing great happens by accident, and if we aim at nothing, we're going to hit it every time. So why don't we have clearly fleshed out visions for our families? Because it's hard, right? Setting a vision for your family is a lot harder than setting the vision for a football team. There isn't a Super Bowl that we can all be trying to win together. It's not quite that clear and concrete, and we're tired. We're exhausted moms that are just trying to survive the day-to-day. So it's hard to step back and to think strategically. It feels overwhelming and scary to ask ourselves big questions because it's mentally taxing and we don't necessarily know what the answers are. And so we kind of put off that deep, introspective, strategic thinking. Or maybe you've never even been encouraged to approach parenting that way and to think like that. Another barrier is that we don't know how. There's so many great character traits and great verses. How do you figure out specifically what your personal values are and what your family's mission will be? And then the third reason that I think we don't think like this is that we don't, as women, oftentimes feel empowered to. If you're from a church culture, you might have been told that your husband's supposed to be the leader of your house, and so you don't feel like it's up to you to set a mission or a purpose for your family. Or maybe you don't think that you need it. Maybe it's a good idea for business, but it doesn't apply to our parenting. So today, rather than talk about New Year's resolutions or setting what could potentially be short-sighted goals, I want to help you step back and take the 30,000-foot look at your life. I want to help you eliminate roadblocks and get you started on coming up with a mission and vision for your home. If you've done this before, then great. You're ahead, because I hadn't ever done that. But it's important every few years to kind of step back and to look at, is what was important to me 5 years ago still the most important thing to me now? And if you've never done this before, then you're in good company, because I hadn't either. And so while mission and culture and vision are things that get me super, super excited, and I love them when it comes to business, I hadn't taken the time to step back and do it for myself or my family because it felt too overwhelming. I had an abstract picture of what I want for my family in the future. I want my boys to know the Lord. I want them to become strong, dependable men who love other people. I want my sons to someday have families for their own and to be hard workers. I want my family to like each other someday, like when we're all grown and they have kids, I want them to like each other. So I had ideas of what I want, but I didn't have a concise way to articulate that, and I didn't know specifically what I wanted or how we were going to get there. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to empower and convince you that getting this conversation started, having a mission and a vision for your family is part of your job as the mom. So we're going to read every woman's favorite passage. We're going to read Proverbs 31, and we're going to look at the ideal wife and mother. So I'm going to read it for us. A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her, and she lacks nothing of value. She brings him good and not harm all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She's like a merchant ship, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still night, and she provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field, and she buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously, and her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her arms she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed, and she is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seats among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies merchants with her sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity and can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Okay, so I know that sometimes we read that passage and it feels like super overwhelming, and it's hard not to just like tune it out at a certain point. But I want to encourage you, don't let the fact that you don't know how to sew, or maybe that's just me, and that you like to turn off your light when you go to bed at night, don't let that make you miss the big picture. The big picture is that this was a woman with a plan, right? This woman was empowered by God and her husband, and she was building an empire to benefit her home. She had core values that are evident when you listen to this passage. She's industrious, she's hardworking, she's wise, she's generous and brave and a caretaker. This was a woman who knew what was important to her and was unleashing her talents and her goals and values on the world around her. And who was it benefiting? It says that it brought honor to her husband, it was a testimony to her children, and it benefited her household, right? The Mom-to-Mom ministry has used Titus 2 as like a primary verse behind what we're doing. And in Titus 2, it urges the older women to teach the younger women to love their husbands and their children, to be self-controlled and pure, working and taking care of their home, submitting to their husband. So, the primary topic for this morning is not specifically what that looks like in your own home, and it's not, we're not talking specifically about what that means and how the roles between you and your husband, like how that's supposed to look. So don't get lost in that passage. But my goal in reading it is to show you that regardless of what position you take, that the Bible clearly teaches that it's your job as the mom to steward your household and your family to the best of your ability and to steward your relationships well. So it follows that if knowing what you want to accomplish in raising your children, determining the culture of your family is absolutely your job as a wife and mother. Your home is the area that God calls you to direct your primary energy to. So, you might have heard like this little sayings, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? Or you're the thermostat of your household, right? You are the chief operations officer. You're the vice president of human resources, right? So doing the groundwork and coming up with what the mission and values for your family are, that is your job. Who better understands the relationship and the culture of your home than you? Who spends more time and energy thinking about parenting and thinking about how you want to raise your children? So, in an ideal situation, let's say you're married to a man who loves the Lord, who's actively involved in co-parenting, and strives to lead your family well. If that was your reality, then it would absolutely be best and most effective for you and your husband to form a vision for your family and come up with what values you want your family to have together. In an ideal world, you and your husband would both go through this exercise that I'm going to show you guys in a little bit. And you guys could either go through it independently or you'd go through it together and you would come up with a vision together. But in reality, I know that some of us aren't married Or maybe some of us have spouses who believe differently than we do, and our goals are different from them. Some of us have spouses that are completely checked out when it comes to parenting. And some of you might even have believing spouses who care about parenting, but their eyes would glaze over if you start talking to them about like the mission and vision for your home and what are our values going to be, right? I would encourage you not to let that stop you. Even if you had 50% custody of your children, knowing clearly and specifically what you were working towards, what specific values you wanted to pass on to your children, values that are unique to who God created you to be, that would still be invaluable for you. A clear picture of your mission and your vision will help you focus your energy. You might have heard it said, don't sweat the small stuff, or pick your battles, right? I remember one time my boys were young. I don't know what they were doing, something crazy, probably like pulling all the pillows off the couch and jumping on them. And my mom was like, Kimberly, are you okay with that? And I looked at her and I said, Mom, I'm just picking my battles. And she said, Kimberly, you might want to pick a few more battles. And we were both right in that instant, because if everything's the most important thing, if you make everything hyper important, then nothing becomes important, right? Like the boy who cried wolf. You lose your urgency if everything is urgent. But at the same time, if nothing's important, then you're like a rudderless ship. So we need to know, what are those things for our family that are so crucial and so important? What are the hills that you're willing to die on? Having a clear understanding of where you're going will make the day-to-day decision-making easier. I wish I could tell you that it will help you solve the endless question of what to make for dinner every night. It won't, but it will help you figure out how to focus your time and your energy. And when you're making those big decisions, like what Sandy was talking about, those huge decisions for your family, having a specific values and mission articulated will help make those things easier. So hopefully I've convinced you that establishing mission and values for your home is your job, and that doing so will be valuable for you. So let's remove the final barrier and talk about how to do it. Now, if I could give you like a quick 17 magazine quiz, and it was like mostly A's, mostly B's, mostly C's, here's your vision, here's your mission for your specific life, I would love to do that. Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple, because it requires kind of getting alone with your thoughts and asking yourself some big questions. And unfortunately, this is not a service that you can hire out. So what I will do today is I'm going to walk you through some tools and give you the questions that you can ask yourself, and then I'll take you through the process that Ryan and I have gone through over the last month, and show you kind of what we came up with. So we can go ahead and start the slideshow. So I'm going to quickly define and differentiate mission and vision for you. So a mission statement should reflect your greatest passion and what you believe your long-term purpose will be. So when I'm talking about a mission statement, again, I'm talking about a long-term purpose, and it should reflect your greatest passions. And then values show you what hitting your mission is going to look like in your daily life. So going forward, those are the definitions for what I'm talking about here. So how do we find that? The first step is to pray. So we're going to pray right now, and I will pray over us. Lord, I believe, God, that you are the great creator. I believe that you strategically planned how you were going to create the earth and how you're going to create each of us as women. I know that you created all of us in this room and that you've given us unique gifts and abilities. You say in Ephesians, God, that we're your workmanship. We're like your little projects that are all done. And I believe that you've created each of us to do good things, and you've given us all gifts. I pray, God, that you would show us as mothers and as women What are the passions that you've given us? What are the dreams you've placed inside our hearts? And I pray that you would help the women in this room discover who you want her to be as a mom to her specific family. God, I pray that you'd give us energy, that you'd motivate us and inspire us, fill us with a passion to become the women and the mothers that you've called us to be. And I just pray that you would be with us in this time and that you would allow some truth that you have. Give each woman in this room a nugget from you. In your name I pray. Amen. So the first step is to specifically pray for God to almost like unveil what purpose he has for you specifically, because God's already put that inside your heart. You just might not be aware of what that is. So you're not coming up with lofty ideas. You're not coming up with like far-reaching goals, things that just sound good. You're seeking to put words to the culture that already exists in your house when things are going at their best. So God knows what that is, and so we're asking him to reveal that to us. Okay, so the next step is to start asking yourself some big questions, and then you're kind of going to brain dump. And we're not going to do this right now, so don't read these questions and start like scribbling furiously. I'm just going to give you questions, and then down the road, you can take some time and sit with them. So when you're brain dumping, don't try to like make it sound good or worry about getting things right. You're literally just like trying to put information on a page so that you can come back and look for key themes. But questions you're going to ask yourself are things like, when are you at your best? And what does that environment look like? What are you doing? When do you feel the most fulfilled? When are you at your worst, and what's that environment like? What makes you angry in a 0 to 60 sort of way? So for example, we'll do family chores sometimes, and we'll give the boys a rake, or we'll have them wash the car. And I mean, you should see these kids. They are like slapping the water with their sponge, and like here and then here. And it absolutely boils my blood. Like instantly I am irate because they're not being hard workers. They have no plan. This is like the worst job I've ever seen in my life. And I am furious about it. And I can hardly even I'm grabbing the sponge out of their hand and I'm showing them, this is how you wash the car, And it's because it's hitting up against my core values, the things that I believe the most strongly in, which is like, do a good job, work with purpose, like have a plan, let's go logically along the car. So chores are fun at our house. But those are the types of things that you want to ask yourself, right? What are you passionate about? When do you feel the most energized? If you want to flash the next slide, Matt. What are values that are core to the way you work, to the way you maintain relationships, parent your children, and lead other people? What are those values? How do you spend your time and your money? What are the character traits you most admire in other people? And then consider your most impactful experiences and what values did you walk away from those specific experiences with? So after you've kind of brain dumped on all of that stuff and what those things are, then the next thing that you would do would be ask close friends. So hopefully after you've asked close friends, it'll kind of start to line up with some of the things that came out for you in your brain dump. So then the fourth step, step 4, would be to look for themes and to kind of pare it down. So you're going to go back through all of the information, the brain dump, and you're going to highlight keywords, circle key phrases, look for what kept repeating itself, and then use that to come up with almost like a character trait. So after you've gone through, you want to come to words like maybe hard worker or brave, some things that encompass everything else. When you notice things that are similar, so maybe you have hard worker and perseverance, maybe you can combine those, because eventually you want to get to 5 or 10 things that you want to encapsulate the culture of your home. Again, you're thinking along the lines of, if I could teach my kids only 7 things, if they were going to leave my house being these X amount of things, what do I want it to be? And again, at this stage, it's still rough, so don't worry about making it sound perfect. So that's step 4, is to try to find what those key traits are for you. Step 5, this is where you're actually going to write your mission and your values. So a mission statement, we already talked about what a mission statement is, but these are the 4 things that a good mission statement will tell you. It will tell you what you do, how you do it, who you do it for. Sorry, I read those out of order. And then why you want to excel. So the blank family will, what action are you guys going to do? For who? By what? Like, how are you going to do it? And then what do you want the desired result to be? So after Ryan and I walked through these exercises, we came to, will you put it on the next slide, Matt? Because I think I show it, yeah, bigger. The Anderson family will grow. So that's the action. And who's the audience? Who are we trying to grow for? We're trying to grow for God. The Anderson family will grow together into the people God has created us to become. How? Using our gifts and abilities. Why? To impact the world around us and to bring glory to God. So that is what our family's mission statement is, at least at this time. So then the next thing after you have established your mission is to come up with your values. You want to go to the next slide for me? Oh, is there one between it? Back? Nope. All right. So values must be actionable. So when we're talking about the list of the character traits, they'll just be words unless you can put them to work and show how they show up in your daily life. So it's not enough just to name the character trait, not enough to say integrity is our family value. You need to show what it looks like in your daily life. So it's not just integrity, it's choose to do right even when no one is watching, something like that. So I go ahead and put up what I came up with for my values. So these are my personal core values. People first. People are image bearers of God. Relationships are the most important thing. So relationships come first. Work hard. Nothing worth having will come easy, so push yourself. Be a team. Work to make the family better. It's not just about you. Share what we have. We've been blessed so that we can bless other people. Do your best. Use your gifts and abilities God's given you to become the best you can be. Don't quit. Be a person of your word and keep your commitments. Do the right thing all of the time, no matter who's watching, whether or not you're praised, choose to do right. And then choose adventure. Life is short, so let's have fun and make memories together. So that's what I came up with after kind of going through these exercises. And then I put Ryan through this process. He was a good sport. And so we came up with his values, and obviously his are way more concise than mine. He was able to say it better with less words. So Ryan's values: growth, always be moving forward, continuously improve. Integrity, do the right thing even when it's hard. Hard work, don't stop until the job's done. Authenticity, be real with others at all times and in all situations. Dependability, be someone who others can count on to do what they say they will. Loyalty, stay the course through good times and bad. Close relationships, invest in a few friends that you can do life with. common sense, or reasonableness. Take time to think before responding. So I hadn't read him mine at all when I started asking him all these fun questions that every husband, I'm sure, wants to be asked late at night. But that's what we came up with for him. And if you know him, that actually sounds a good bit like him. So once we took our values together, I was surprised to see we had quite a bit of overlap. So if you want to put up the next slide for me, I put in purple the traits that we had that were essentially the same. And so this is what we came up with for our Anderson family values. So anything is in purple is stuff that we both had, and then we kind of took from each of ours. So the ones that are red I added, and the ones that are blue are the ones that are his. And we came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 things that, like, if our boys could walk away from us with nothing else, this is what we would want them to walk away with. So if you were to go through this exercise independently, then you would get to step 6, which is trying to join them with your husbands if you were married and if he was willing to be involved in this. Can you put up the next slide, Matt? Thank you. Okay, so to take individual values and make them into family values, you could do it multiple ways. So Ryan and I both did them individually, and then I looked for overlap and combined them. You could also ask the questions to your husband together, and you guys could answer, like do the brain dump part together as a unit. Or, and I think very likely, if I wasn't teaching, Ryan probably wouldn't have been such a good sport. So very likely I would have found myself at option 3, which is you do it, get it 80% done, and then talk to your husband and read it to him and let him add or cut out whatever, have input at that stage, because it's a lot easier to edit something than it is to create it from scratch. So if you are in the trenches right now with really little kids, and all of this sounds great, but you can't imagine having the energy to do that, then don't worry. Because yes, it would be absolutely ideal for you and your husband to sit down while you're pregnant and come up with your vision statement and your mission for your family before you have kids. But we just did this. And I'm somebody who's like super passionate about, like I said, about culture and mission and vision and where are we going. We just did this, and Noah's 11 and the twins are 10. So it's never too late to start. And even if you're teaching your grandkids, think about what's the legacy that you want to leave. What do you want to be remembered for? What are those character traits? What are those things? The Pareto principle tells us that 20% of what we do accounts for 80% of our results. So if you know what your 20% is, then you can focus your energy on it. If you're in the trenches right now and you can't even go to the bathroom by yourself, let alone ask yourself when you feel the most fulfilled, that's okay. I've been there. But you can start the brainstorming process, and you can start noting those things that make you angry from 0 to 60. And you can start noticing what your family feels like when things are going well. And start praying for a time when you could have the energy to think and plan and parent strategically. And maybe set a reminder or set a goal for yourself. Maybe in a year, you'll be able to get to thinking and parenting this way. Maybe in 5 years. I had all of this done, and I didn't know exactly how to end it. And so last night, I was just vegging out, and I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw this thing by Sissy Goff, which is somebody that Missy's talked about. And it said, having a sense of purpose can help kids combat anxiety and stress, regulate anger, and ward off depression. And I think that's so true. I read that to Ryan, and he's like, that's not just true for kids, that's true for everybody. We were at a soccer tournament this weekend with my boys, and they played their little hearts out. And they got to this game, and we're down 2-1, and they just with everything in them wanted to win. I have no idea where they get that. And so they are like going nuts trying to score a goal. And by the end of the game, both of them are in tears on the field, because they know there's like a minute left and they're down and they're going to lose. They're out there crying, both of them, and the time runs out and they lose the game. And they walk off the field irate, like level 10. They're so mad and disappointed and frustrated. And we didn't make it into the championship game. We had to go into the semifinals, which is just dumb because it's like we've already played 2 soccer games at this point. Like, let us just go home. We don't want to play a 3rd game to get 3rd place. At least that's how I think, you guys. And the boys totally think that way too. And so they're like just losing their marbles. And so we had like an hour as a family together to debrief and to try to get ready to go back out and play that last game. And Ryan and I had just done this, and we had just come up with like our family values. And it's like I could speak to them specifically and say, listen, the Anderson family doesn't quit. The Anderson family does their best, and you might be working harder, and you might feel like your teammates don't want it as much as you. You can only control yourself, and you are going to go out there, and you're going to do your best. And when it gets hard, that's when our character shines through, boys. And, welcome. We're going to lay it all out there, and we're going to go back out there, and we're going to finish strong and do our best. So when it's hard and you're discouraged and angry and frustrated, that's when your core values have a chance to show, and they can shine through. So I would just encourage you, you can be the kind of mom that can speak life into their kids, who can tell them, this is who we are. This is who we're going to become. But in order to do that, you have to know who is your family and what are we specifically, the Anderson family, trying to become. We're going to have some time amongst your table that you guys can kind of chat about this. And so I'll turn you over to that.